Hi friends, my name is Bhavya Mangla. I'm IATF qualified auditor doing audit for the automotive sector for the last 20 years. I'm again back with a very interesting topic, and today I'm going to talk about Attribute MSA. And by the time this video will end, you'll understand what is the difference between attribute and variable, what is type 1 error, what is type 2 error, how to conduct the study with respect to attribute, and how we can conclude that whether it is good or bad. When we talk about real life, generally, if you see your wife or your spouse is making a tea for you, what happens? Sometimes we say, well, the sugar is high, sometimes the sugar is low, sometimes we say that, oh, the color is very light, sometimes we say that it is very strong. Why does it happen that every day when the same person is making the tea, why there is a variation and why we find different taste? Something similar is happening with respect to the attribute study, whereas different people are working in the organization, checking the same characteristic, they have got the same kind of training, they are working in the same work environment, but still the results are different. Each person sees things in a different way. But before that, it's very important to understand the difference between attribute and variable. When we talk about variable data, primarily we are talking about the data which can be counted in numbers. It can be length, diameter, distance, like in kilometers or meters, something like that, which we are checking with a vernier caliper or a micrometer. On the other hand, when we are talking about an attribute data, we are talking about something which cannot be measured but which can be felt. It can be cold or maybe hot, it can be white or it can be black, it can be fit or it can be not fit, where we are using some different gauges or maybe visually we are checking it, and through that we are deciding whether it is fulfilling to the requirement, or in a way binary, good or not good, yes, not yes, something like that. When we talk about MSA study with respect to attribute, there are three kind of variations which can be there in a system. The first and the foremost is the variation which is within the appraiser who is doing the repeated measurement. The second is a variation between the different appraisers who are doing that measurement. And the third, very interesting, is a variation between the appraiser measurement and the reference standard that we are following at that particular time. When we talk about measurement, there are certain errors which happens, and it is divided into two parts, type 1 and type 2. When we talk about type 1 error, primarily it's an error wherein we are talking something which is a good part, but we call it as a bad. Sometimes it is also called a false alarm, and it is a producer risk, because what is happening is that something which is good is called bad. On the other hand, when we talk about type 2 error, primarily it's talking about something which is a bad part, but then we are talking it as a good part. It is also called a misrate, and it is also called a consumer risk, because the producer may have thought that it is okay, but it's a problem for the consumer to use. There are 5 key steps. If we follow effectively, systematically, we can do the attribute study effectively. I am not going in detail with respect to talking about the different formulas and all that, because anyone can get it. But the most important thing is to understand the methodology, what's the crux behind it, and what is most important when we go ahead with this particular study. So these 5 steps are, the first one is talking about the planning the study. Second one is about conducting the study. The third one is about analyzing and interpreting the results. The fourth one is talking about improving the measurement system if necessary. And the fifth and the most important is the ongoing evaluation that we keep on doing with respect to that. So let me start with the first step, that how we can plan this particular measurement. And this is the most important, because in majority of the cases, this is a step where we make the majority of the mistakes. And because of that, whatever results that we get, they are actually not as per our expectation, or whatever results are coming, we actually cannot trust them. So the first and the foremost here is we have to define the sample size. And generally, if we go by AIG manual, it should be 50 samples, or if there is a customer specific requirement, we need to follow as per that. Another important thing is that selected sample, that 50 samples, should cover the complete variation in the entire process. Generally, the thumb rule is that we should have 50 good pieces, 50 bad pieces in a percentage wise, and in that 30% pieces should at least be on the border level, on the good side as on the bad side. Means there is a possibility that something which is good but you can say fail, and something which is bad but you may say that it is good. And it's also important that when you are picking the sample, it should have only one type of defect. And the people who are working, they should actually be trained. It's not that we are using any kind of people for that particular operation. And the environment should exactly be the same where we are actually doing the measurement, not in a very standard room type environment. So whatever is the light intensity and other things, it should be exactly like that only. Then brings point number 2, that is how to conduct the study. So when we are conducting the study, again there are certain important factors which needs to be taken care, so that whatever the output that is coming, that is as per the expectation. So the first step is we need to decide the time and place where we need to do the study, and it's a blind study. The person who is getting this particular study done, they should not know about the sample numbers and what is the result of that particular sample, because we are talking about good and bad. Then we also need to decide how much time we need to give for that. Why it is important is because in a mass production stage, we are checking, we are doing the inspection very fast. So at the time of MSA study also, we also need to make sure that we have to give exactly the same time, not more time. Also we need to see that what kind of environmental changes that we are doing. We should make sure that whatever we are writing, we should write correctly, and the result should not be visible to the operator. Only then we can make sure that study can be done exactly. Now the third and a very interesting step is that once we conduct the study, the third step is about analyzing and interpreting the result. Because if we do the study right and we are not analyzing it, interpreting it correctly, whatever output is coming may not serve the purpose. So here we are talking about the kappa value. So as I said earlier, I'm not going to talk about the formula because we can very easily get, but the most important thing is to understand the intent. So when we talk about the kappa value, if the kappa value is 1, so it means we are getting excellent result. There is a 100% agreement between appraiser and the reference both. Then if the kappa value is more than 0.75, it means measurement system is accepted, even though there is some error, but still is acceptable. One important thing here is that there are certain customers who have got some specific requirement, like TVS supplier manual, they don't talk about the kappa value. Then the next is when the kappa value is between 0.4 to 0.75. So here it is conditionally, it can be accepted depending upon how much is the error and how it can impact wherever the process is happening. But if the kappa value is less than 0.4, then it is not at all accepted. Then some other important factors here is that first of all, when you are looking into the data, we have to see with respect to the appraiser that when you are checking the reading for 3 times for the same appraiser, whether the repeatability is good or not. If the repeatability is not good, then we need to analyze it, that why it is happening, and we may need to repeat the study. But if the repeatability is good within the appraiser, then in that case we need to see how much is the agreement with the standard and with respect to the other appraisers. And then overall we can decide that yes, whether it is fulfilling to the requirement or it is not fulfilling to the requirement. The last and very important step is about improving. Now here the intent is that whatever study that we have done, we did it only once, but is it that we are meeting some requirement of IATF or maybe auditors or maybe consultant or maybe the customer, or we want to see that how we can improve further. So there are certain things that we need to take care with respect to that. The first very important thing is that in case we think that the value is very high and it is not meeting the requirement, then we may need to look about the training to the different people who are under inspection at that particular time. Then we also need to ask certain questions that whether they are actually understanding the characteristic for which they are doing the measurement, whether the instructions are clear, if there is any vision issue or anything else is there. But in case the values are right, then we can see that how we can add more samples on the borderline so that we can check that whether they are fulfilling to the requirement about type 1 and type 2 error or not. And then certainly the last and the most important point is about the ongoing evaluation. When we talk about ongoing evaluation, the intent is that we need to keep on seeing that how the environment is changing, how things are changing, whether we are also changing our evaluation accordingly to that. So for example, whether we have covered all the inspectors and all are fulfilling to the requirement. In case any new operator is coming, are we adding into that particular study? In case we think that there is a certain frequency, maybe 3 months or 6 months, are we doing that after a certain frequency? And in case our borderline catalog is changing, some new defects are coming, some new complaints are coming, maybe in that case also we need to add something more. So if I do a summary, I talked about what is attribute, what is variable, then I talked about the three different kind of variations which can be there in a measurement. Then I talked about type 1 and type 2 error. Then I talked about the 5 key steps which we need to do, wherein you can systematically plan the entire attribute study, and then we can check the kappa value to see that whether it is fulfilling to the requirement or not. Well, in case you want to understand a little bit more about this particular video, you will find a link below. You will find a blog there. There you can find this particular video in detail in much more way. And in case you are liking these kind of videos and blogs, you can always share with your friends and colleagues, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel and my website bhavyamangla.com. Thank you.